Hello everyone, welcome to our Maya 2020 tutorial series. This is going to be about rigging this construction worker here. So we're going to go from the ground up on how to build a character rig starting from scratch. This model was created from our previous lesson with modeling a construction worker. So if you care to have this exact asset, you will have to go back and model it and follow this tutorial. So I'm not going to be providing that asset. But you can always use any character model that you might be working with and just follow the same steps. It doesn't really matter the model itself, as long as it's a biped human, it'll basically be the same thing. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start out by creating a joint system that will make up the legs here. So we're going to go to change our shelf here. Currently it's set up to poly modeling. We're going to change it over to rigging. And we're also going to change our modeling tab here to rigging as well. Okay, so then we have these joint options, so we can go ahead and start building our joint system. Also, I'm going to want this character to be on reference. I don't want it to be creating joints and accidentally select it, and all of a sudden my model is selected instead of my joints. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new layer that will be just for my base mesh here. So with this guy here selected, I'll go ahead and click on this icon right here, which will create a new layer with this base mesh already added to it. Let's call it layer 1. So I'll just go ahead and double click on this one and just call it construction worker base mesh. Okay. And I'm going to turn this on to reference by checking this box right here twice. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to jump over to my side view. So I'm going to go to my 4-panel, and I'll click spacebar on my side view here. And I'm going to turn on joint X-ray, which is this icon right here. I don't really need this one on it. Go ahead and check that. What this will do for me is it'll make it to where as I'm creating joints, I can see through the mesh, but it doesn't make the mesh itself transparent. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up the joint menu. This is the icon for the joint menu. You can also find it underneath skeleton, create joints. Same thing either way. You can double click it right here, or you can go to skeleton in the submenu here. It'll do the same thing. Okay, so the only one thing I really want to change here is I want to make sure that radius on my joints is appropriately sized. So let's go ahead and test this out first. Let's press 1 in here. Excuse me. And that actually looks like it'll be just fine. So I'm just going to undo that. I don't need to adjust the radius. I just want to make sure it wasn't too small. If it is too small, then you can go ahead and adjust the long bone radius and the short bone radius, and that will make it to where this little ball that makes up the joints has a wider radius. But it won't actually affect how the model works either way. It just makes it more visually easier to work with. Okay, so going forward here, we want to create the legs. So I'm going to create one joint that's going to be up here in the hips. So like right around in this area right here. And I'm going to click down next over here, right at the knee. Right here should probably be good. I'm going to click over here, back near the ankle. That's all right. I'm going to go down to the foot here, and then down to the toe. That should be good. And I'll press enter to complete it. Okay, so now I have my first joint chain here. That's good. I'll go ahead and close this. I want to make sure my joints are named properly, because if your joints aren't named properly, you can end up with some big issues right away, especially if you're going in and out of game engines. When it comes to associating joints, knowing which joints go to what is very important. Also for creating set-driven keys, knowing what joints go to what is important. So if everything just says joint 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the naming conventions end up off the rails really quick. So I'm going to start out by calling this one here leg, and this is going to be the left leg to begin with. So I'm going to do underscore, oops, I actually forgot the prefix. So the prefix will kind of depend on what studio you're working in. JN is for joints, BN is for bones. They're the same thing, it's just a prefix. Usually I use BN, it's the one I've been using forever, so I usually tell my students use BN for bone, and then leg, and this will be L. Okay, so I'll press return, and that will leave that one named. Next one will be, actually let's go back up to this one. I'll be a little more explicit than L. Let's do left. Okay, let's go down to the knee. And we'll call this one BN knee left. There we go. Don't worry about freezing transforms. You can't do that with joints. They have to maintain their 3D position, so we're not going to be freezing anything. Okay, let's go ahead and call this one BN ankle left. Okay, go down to this one. And this one's going to be BN foot left. And then we'll go down to this one. This one will be BN toe left. There we go. Now we're going to go to our front view, but I want to make sure that this is lined up right. So you can see how it's right down the middle. That's not what we want. We want this to be off to this side right here. And the hip is good. Knees all right. Looks like the ankle needs to be moved over a bit, right? So we're just going to move this over a smidge. Okay. Make sure you're just grabbing this one axis. You don't grab it in this one here, or you'll be moving it in all 3 axes, which is generally not what you want to do. Okay, so that's good. Let's go ahead and create the IK system for this thing. Okay. And actually, before we do the IKs, I'm just kind of thinking back. Sometimes what ends up happening is the IKs end up getting messed up a little bit. So I'm actually going to want to create these by hand. What I'm referring to is when we mirror. Sometimes the mirror gets messed up because of the IKs. So let's actually go ahead and mirror now, and then we'll deal with the IKs afterwards. So we're going to go to skeleton, mirror joints. Let's go ahead and go to the submenu for this one. And across which axis? Usually it's the X and Y, but sometimes it's X and Z. So let's go ahead and just start with X and Y since that's the normal one. Kind of depends on which axis you're in, but it looks like X and Y is what we want. Here's the X, that's the Y. The Z is facing right at me. So we're going to do search for left, and we're going to replace it with right. We'll hit apply. Okay, so let's see what we have. Looks like it might have had it face the right way or wrong way. Yep, it sure did. That's fine. We'll just hit Control Z, undo that, and we'll just change the behavior rather than being mirror across the X, Y. Let's do XZ, hit apply. Oh, that's up and down. YZ. There we go. Let's go ahead and make sure everything's, oh. Looks like when I did my undos, I went a little bit too far, so I undid the name change. So let's just go back, undo that, and we'll call this one right. There we go. Okay, so all those have the right at the end. That's good. And you can see the right in the right position on the other side. So that's also good. Let's go ahead and now put in our IK handles. So IKs, I'm going to give you a brief overview of what IKs are. IK stands for inverse kinematics, meaning that essentially what ends up happening is you create a target point that you can grab onto, and then it will make the math go backwards on the joints so that they rotate based on wherever your position is on the target. So for instance, if we have it start here as the anchor and then it has the handle down here, as I move this ankle, it'll solve where this and this is supposed to rotate to based off wherever I move this handle. So that's IK, inverse kinematics. FK is the other option, which is forward kinematics, meaning that we create a system of forward moving rotations. So it'd be this joint would rotate this way, this one would rotate this way, and go so forth, going all the way down the chain. Okay, so inverse kinematics is pretty much what you want to use in most cases, when it comes, especially with bipeds and organic type characters. When it comes to robotics, sometimes FK makes more sense. Okay, let's just go ahead and get into this. So this is your IK handle tool. You'll also see that underneath skeletons, there's also create IK handle tool and other type of IKs. But I'm going to stay on the shelf here. I prefer to stay on the shelf just because it creates a better workflow. It's where you're working faster. You don't have to go up to the menu sets as often. So I'll click on this guy here. Let's just double click on it. Before we get into creating our IK, one thing we want to make sure is where it says current solver, that says rotate plane solver. It does this by default. Rotate plane solver is the factory setting for the IK handle tool. But rotate plane solver is what you'd use if you have more than 2 joints that you're currently working with, which is mainly what you're using IKs for. But sometimes you only have 1 joint, so then you use a single chain solver. It's pretty much the same thing as far as how the targeting system works, but this one, it gives you a rotator at the bottom and allows you to kind of solve that joint in between it. Okay, so I'll explain a little bit more about the differences as we go forward, but let's just go ahead and pick the rotate plane solver for now. Okay, and I'm going to click at the top here on the hip joint, and I'm going to click down here at the ankle. Okay, you can see it's created this little handle here. I'll go ahead and test this out just for a second. Okay, so that's good. You can see how it's grabbing the foot. Pretty neat, right? You can already see how this is going to work for us. Okay, so that's good. Let's go ahead and keep on moving. Let's go ahead and jump back into our submenu for our IK handle tool. I want to change this now from rotate plane solver to single chain. Before we used rotate plane solver because we had this knee between the anchor and where the target's going to be at. But these ones down here are going to be from 1 joint down to the next one. So I'll select this one, go down to the next one. Okay. I'll select the IK handle tool again. It's over in this area right here. Whatever your last tool is will pop up right below your move, rotate, scale tools. It's this icon here. So this thing here always changes. So I'm just activating again by clicking on it. Then I'll click on this joint here. Okay, so now I have 2 single chains and 1 rotate plane solver. Okay, so I'm going to go back and make sure everything's named properly. So we're going to call this one IK toe left. This one's going to be called IK foot left. This one's going to be called IK leg left. Okay, so that's good. Now we need to do the same thing on the other side. So let's go ahead and go into our IK handle tool again. And we're going to click up here. Actually, but let's open the submenu first. We're going to call this rotate plane solver because we have that joint that's between the hip and the ankle. There's this knee joint. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the hip here. I'm going to click down at the ankle. That's good. And then I'll go ahead and jump back into the submenu of my IK handle tool, change it from rotate plane solver back to single chain, and I'm going to click on the ankle, go down to the foot, press return, okay, and then I'm going to do one more time. I'm just going to click it from the foot joint down to the toe joint. There we go. That's all good. And I'm going to call them IK toe right. This one's IK foot right. And this one is IK leg right. Okay. Alright. So now we have our leg joints created. We're going to stop this lesson here, and in the next lesson we're going to create a reverse footlock and a pull vector for these joints. So a pull vector will be a target that will allow us to decide where this knee is actually pointing, because sometimes we end up with our foot over here and it isn't always facing forward. Sometimes it'll snap around backwards. Things can sometimes happen that are kind of weird. So the pull vectors will give us some control over which direction our knees and elbows are facing. Alright, so thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next lesson. Let's go ahead and save also before we end this lesson. So save scene. And if you weren't working on this project as I have for the last 2 projects, you probably want to go and create yourself a new project. So in the project window, you can create yourself a new project. You'd also want this to be a set project, so that way Maya knows this is where you're wanting to work. So you go to File, set the project here. I'm not going to navigate to mine because mine's already set up. And then you'd also want to go to File, Save Scene As, and this one is going to be our not animation, rigging stage. Okay, so you save as, continue. All right, so then you would have your project, you have your project set, and we're now have a saved scene of our rig so far. All right, so thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next lesson.